This week's podcast is sponsored by Marantz, who've been delivering advanced home audio innovations since 1953. Marantz audio products have been designed to reproduce music as it was meant to be heard, because music matters. Find out more about what makes Marantz so special at marantzmoments.com. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 28th of October, and joining me in this edition, Steve Withers.
It's a trap!
And Ed Selley.
I do believe they think I'm some sort of god.
Everybody does, Ed. Kaz will be along, but Kaz isn't coming along till the movie section, but he is joining us this evening, but he's not here to do his quote, so one of you do a quote for him.
Soon I'll be dead and you with me.
There we go. Right, welcome back. It's best of the month, and we're going to do our best of the month, obviously. There's no normal podcast on the 4th of November, so next week we're all away delivering some packages to Parliament for the following day. So instead, we've pre-recorded the first in a series of calibration podcasts, and we've pre-recorded that one. That will go up on the 4th of November with Tyler Pruitt from, I keep wanting to say Spectracal. It's not Spectracal anymore, it's Portrait Displays, and we're going to be talking about Kalman and calibration techniques and all that kind of thing as our first sort of delving into the subject. So that is in place of the normal podcast on the 4th of November. But we're here tonight, so we may as well crack on and do something. So my diet, I mentioned it last week, a lot of nice feedback in the podcast thread. It wasn't just because of one documentary. I have been thinking about it for a long time. I'm now rethinking it because of the smell.
Oh no, that's a phase. It passes through.
Yeah, it's passing through at the minute, and I'm almost passing out.
Oh, that is the downside of vegetarianism, is that you do fart and shit a lot. There's no getting around that fact. Laura eats a lot of vegetarian food, and it gets quite pungent. I'm not going to box it up.
I'm sure
nicely.
your wife is absolutely delighted to have that information.
Serves her right. I'm not delighted to have to put up with it sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also not going completely meat-free. I said I was going to knock 90% of it out of my diet, and that is the intention. But even still, I've been finding it rather strange this week, eating lots of things that I haven't really eaten before as well. So I'm kind of finding my way around it. Corn mince is terrible.
No. It needs. It's not an easy medium to work with, but you can get good results out of it. If I'm happy to not, we won't go down the rabbit hole of it this podcast, but there are ways and means of making corn mince fly.
What I've kind of realised is that you put it in last as an ingredient.
Otherwise it also essentially. If you were calculating to do a sauce with beef or pork mince, and you'll be thinking about the amount of fluid in that, corn mince works better with a higher level of fluid in the sauce, because it's able to absorb it, and that also helps to impart more flavour to it as well. So it's a case of just changing up some of the things that you do without having to bin the mince dishes altogether.
Yeah, but I had a cracking bolognese on spinach tonight with some cheese on top as well. It was really
splendid.
Really
I don't know if there's any limits to the amount of spinach I would voluntarily eat. I bloody love spinach. Hated it as a kid.
Yep.
I absolutely love the stuff, and I eat vast reams of it. So yeah, I'm all in favour of that.
And also been working, which we'll come on to in the hardware review section. My to-do list just seems to grow rather than get smaller. I'm doing it the wrong way around. But yeah, we've got plenty to talk about there as well, work-wise. Steve, what have you been up to?
Watched a bit of rugby. I was extremely happy yesterday. In fact, I was emotionally and mentally exhausted after that match. Felt like I played 80 minutes. It took me the rest of the day to come down and get over it. But yeah, otherwise working, went to the cinema, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Actually, we'll talk about it at the end of this podcast, won't we? But yeah, not a lot really. But yeah. I live a boring life. I think we've established that.
Yeah,
don't know why you keep asking me.
Well, we can bypass you if you like. But yeah, we're talking about movies. We are moving the movie reviews to the end of the podcast going forward. I was going to come on to this later on, but you have mentioned
we are going to spoil the shit out of it.
Yes. And we've had a few complaints about spoilers here and there, so we're going to move stuff like that to the end of the podcast, so you can disappear if you like. If you don't want to know anything about what we've been at the cinema to see, then that gives you the option to drop out.
Back. 6 months later when you have seen it.
Yeah. Do you think anybody would ever come back to a 6-month-old podcast? No, I don't think so either. Ed, what have you been doing? I've been actually, I know what you've been doing because I've been following your tweets, but tell everybody else.
Right. Well, I've been in a pitch battle with OpenReach. If you do work for OpenReach, why? And that's fun and games. It turns out that the speed available for my internet technically is a very healthy high 40s meg. But unfortunately, there are no more fibre slots available at my local exchange, so I am completely dependent on when OpenReach feels like adding more. And they're a monopoly. They don't care. They'll do it when they feel like it. So I have to look into the dubious pleasures of ADSL. We'll see what comes of that. I mean, really, the threshold.
What are you using right now then?
I'm still on the. I still got the 3 router, yeah. But
just stick with that then.
Because where I was living, it had 44 megs. Here, the highest I've seen is 4.
Oh, not so good.
No.
But how about putting an aerial on the roof? Something like that, antenna. That would get better.
Yeah, but
there are ways of getting that up considerably.
Yeah, but you've got the same router as me. Where's the aerial socket?
Oh, no, sorry, yes. You would need... basically, there are people who will install an aerial for you and give you a new router as well.
Right.
Basically, it's just a receiver for a 4G signal.
It is, correct.
I haven't got the same router as you. I bought a new one.
Have you now?
Slightly a better one. But, you can fix that. It might be that's a quicker and easier solution than waiting for OpenReach to pull the finger out. So.
It's certainly a stopgap solution rather than dicking about with ADSL. So no, okay, that's food for thought. So there's been that, and then today I collected the cats. So the cats are now in the house. Actually, the cats are currently behind the sofa that I'm sat on because they're still a bit nervous. They've had a wander round, but they've retreated back to behind the sofa. Bless them. They were a bit surprised to be yanked out of the old place and brought over here. But I'm looking forward to having something else alive in the house other than me on the days when my son isn't here. So that's nice. The rug has turned up. You can be briefly seen in the foot of the photo I stuck on Instagram this morning. And with the houses, hopefully it's a bit apparent. There should be a bit less of an echo in my voice.
It's still echoey.
It's still echoey, but we're getting better. I don't really sing the praises of it, but the rug made a big difference, certainly to Sonic, the performance of the speakers in the room. So we're getting there, and this marks. Saturday night last weekend was my first night in it, and now I have beds and all sorts of other things, and it's beginning to feel like a home, which is awfully nice. And the potential this space has for testing speakers there's considerable potential here. It just has to be unlocked with a little bit of work on just calming it down. And someone did ask on Instagram, which I'm assuming has to have come from the AVForums podcast, about whether I could share some of the room treatment stuff I do. Yes, I'm happy to do that as and when I can work out what I'm going to do. You
can go on wish.com, Ed, and you can buy from China. You can buy these sound panels that go on the wall made of foam. Probably highly flammable if they're coming from China.
Carcinogenic.
But you get 48 of them for £14.
That sounds like an extreme solution. Because I have to say, one of the other priorities, longer term priorities, but something I want to get sorted before Christmas, is I have a sudden desire in this place. I'm going to have some art. There are certain bits of art that I would like to procure. It's going to take time because, art that I want
money.
So,
presumably.
Yes, there's that too. Well, no, I was planning on doing a heist, Steve. You've spoiled it now. So I don't want to cover the walls with foam.
No, you see, I had images there of you sitting at the easel, Ed, actually painting. I thought that's what you meant.
I'm sorry, I can't paint for shit. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily seem to be an impediment for some artists these days, but nevertheless, I can't.
I have a painting by a famous Vietnamese artist who I'm hoping will die soon, so the value of my painting will tell. Because the bastard keeps knocking him off. He's prolific, which is annoying. I want my artist to be like Leonardo da Vinci. He practically never finished a painting. He was rubbish at finishing stuff. That's what you want when you're an artist.
Well, the piece,
dead and lazy.
The thing I want more than anything is a Chris Foss print. I wanted one
of a spaceship.
Exactly. I wanted one. All of the crap sci-fi books I read as a kid, they all. Chris Foss was one of the
Chris Foss
he was one of the on-call artists for Penguin Science Fiction. Yep. So they are my childhood, and I just want one. And I suspect in getting one, it's a statement that it does say I live alone more than almost anything else. I mean, short of putting a painting of having that
poster of that girl scratching her ass.
Exactly.
That's the quintessential. I live alone.
Nevertheless, I've wanted one for years and years and years, and I think I'm going to finally get that sorted. And I'd also,
I just imagine you could probably buy an original Chris Foss. I mean, I don't know how collectible he is, but
I had a look at some original Chris Fosses. That they are hovering between the $3,000 to $6,000 mark, which is more than I'm afraid I've got. But the official prints. It's 400.
Well, he's not getting any younger, Chris.
Ed, I know, but nevertheless, one of the official prints, the A1 print, is £400, and I'd quite like. Yeah, that's a good size piece.
I know some people would spend that on a rug.
Well, I did, but
on a coat.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that one. Yeah.
Well, look. Yeah. What can I say? I like nice things. It's one of the reasons I review audio equipment. It turns up in large amounts without me paying for it. I'm a simple soul. Well, I'm not a simple soul.
Well, that's the thing, though, isn't it? The plus side of our job is we get to review, play with really cool things. The downside, you have to give them back. I had a 5.1 system in the house 2 weeks ago. I mean, it nearly killed me. They were so heavy. But their combined value was £32,000, and this was the cheap stuff. And you kind of think like, yeah, I would normally never get a chance to listen to something like this at home, but unfortunately, eventually they had to go. Although I was quite glad to see the back of them.
Yeah, but then it gives you a false sense of value, though, doesn't it?
I didn't know how much they were actually until they were being collected, and I asked Alan the cost, and he said, $32,000. And I thought, bloody hell, thank God the house didn't burn down. That would not have been covered by my insurance policy.
No, hang on a second.
Yeah, but you see, at least you're getting something there. I had a 30-inch TV that was £35,000.
That's true, yeah. It's easy to nick too. I mean, they could have walked out under arm. You couldn't have nicked these speakers. It took 3 people to move them. The centre speaker was larger than most floor standards.
I'd have loved for someone to have turned up at Cash Converters with that broadcast monitor. Has he got any speakers? No. What are those fans at the back?
Has he got a tuner? No.
I'll give you a tenner.
Smart platform.
What were the speakers, Steve?
Paradigm Persona.
Oh.
Yeah, like you should see my face when I asked how much it was, though, because I'd forgotten to. I thought, oh well, how much are they? 32,000. What? So that was an interesting experience. But the sub was size of a small car, and weighed about as much too.
Yeah, and at 30 odd grand, you could probably buy a small sporty car.
Well, no, I said that the system is worth more than my car, considerably more than my car.
Again, it's a priorities thing. And for every time that I'm sad that a piece of equipment goes because I can't rationalise buying it, wait a bit of time and something equally lovely will turn up, and you get to play with that as well. I mean, it's the ultimate box swapping experience, and it's great. I love it. And it's one of the reasons why I persist in doing it.
Unless you're reviewing OLED TVs because they're all the bloody same.
Yeah.
Well, look,
that's very samey, doesn't it?
You need to. Well, you've got some projectors interspersed in there as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I can fix you up with an audio review, but you've just been complaining about how busy you are. So I could sort you out something else to play with. But
I wasn't complaining. I was just saying they are virtually all the same. So it gets. I couldn't be a freelancer. I always said I couldn't be a freelancer because I can't write the same thing over and over again. But what I'm finding is I'm writing the same things.
Exactly what you are getting at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, but there are slight differences, and we'll come on to that. Right, I think we're all wrapped up. Competition time. Again, this is just a selection of the competitions. I think there's about 25 at the moment, so we're not going to go through all 25. I've kind of picked out the best of the bunch, or maybe the ones that are more appealing to our listeners to go through. So we're going to do it. I'll go first, Ed, and then Steve. So win a copy of Angel Heart on 4K Ultra HD, 30th October closing.
Win a Yamaha MusicCast Bar 400 worth £649, which ends on the 31st of October.
You can win a World of Warships starter pack worth 15 quid, unlimited number to be won. Enter and basically you'll win, and it's worldwide entry, and that also ends on the 31st of October.
Win a copy of Brightburn on Blu-ray, 8th of November.
Win a copy of Scarface on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, that's 11th of November.
You can win copies of Criterion's October titles. Don't know what they are. You haven't listed them, Phil, but look it up on the on the site. They're on Blu-ray, and that finishes on the 12th of November.
And win copies of Red Heat and Universal Soldier on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, 12th of November.
That's a couple of guilty pleasures there.
You love Red Heat. Universal Soldier I can take or leave, but Red Heat, that's a great film. Well, it's not a great film, but it's a very compelling
It's not a great film, but it's an enjoyable film.
Exactly.
Do you want to finish us off, Ed?
Right, there are lots more competitions. Lots more competitions are being added daily, so head over to avforums.com/competitions to enter even more. All competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members resident in the UK, except, as mentioned, the World of Warships one, where I don't care where you're listening from, you can enter it and get your warship game on. There are no previous competition winners.
Okay, that's us done for the first part. We'll be back in a sec with hardware reviews. Right, okay, hardware reviews. Steve, you've never been looking at another soundbar, have you?
Yes, and you mentioned OLEDs being a bit samey. Soundbars tend to get a bit samey too. I've had the LG SL10YG in, which is their flagship soundbar.
What a terrible name for a soundbar.
Yes. It's not catchy, is it?
No.
The G at the end, as with all the other sort of soundbars this year from LG, the G stands for Google because it's got Google Assistant built in. This is
so what does the S, L, and Y stand for then?
I have no idea. Soundbar? S for soundbar. L
okay.
for this year, I guess. 10 because I've absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. But yes, it's so I reviewed the SL9YG not so long ago, which was pretty good. But it had this weird feature where you could either mount, sort of install it flat in front of the TV, or so horizontally flat in front of the TV, or vertically flat up against the wall, and then it would, internally it would recognize the orientation and change the processing. But it was ridiculous because this had two front firing drivers, 2 side firing drivers, and 2 upward firing drivers. You stick it up against the wall flat. That means that the forward firing drivers are now firing down, and the upward firing drivers are now firing towards you. The side ones are still firing to the side. So, from the point of view of immersive audio and Atmos and DTSX, it just messed it up completely. So it looked nice up against the wall like that, but my limited, because obviously I wasn't actually wall mounting it, but sticking it up against the wall and sort of holding it there with a couple of books underneath to sort of support it. It didn't sound very good. This one does not do that. This one is more traditional. You just either put it flat in front of the telly, or there are brackets, so you put it up against the wall, but still in a flat orientation, which makes sense because it's got 3 forward, 2 side, and 2 upward firing. The other difference is that the 9YG only has 2 forward firing drivers, so there's no dedicated center channel, whereas this has got a dedicated center channel as well as left and right hand sides and upward firing drivers. So that's good. It's really big. I mean, you couldn't use this soundbar with anything less than 65-inch TV. I did have it in front of a 55-inch because I happened to have one in for review at the time, and it looked ridiculous. It's just way too big. But big's good. I mean, in terms of soundstage, huge. Really big front soundstage, fantastic. Good subwoofer, well integrated. So I really like the sound of it. As with all these kinds of soundbars, with the notable exception of the HW Q90R from Samsung. There's no rear speakers, so it's a very front-heavy soundstage. You've got sort of width to it from the side drivers. You've got a big front soundstage. You do get the overhead effects at sort of the first third of the room, but then there's obviously nothing behind you. unless you buy the separately available the optional rear speakers, wireless rear speakers. However, they don't have any upward firing drivers, so you still won't have overhead effects behind you. So if you put something on like the Atmos demo disc with the helicopter flying around over your head, obviously it's flying around at the front of the room, but not behind you. So that's a downside, but that's a downside of all these soundbars. It's very much a front soundstage, sort of the first third of the room, basically, I would say, is where you've got your soundstage, and there's nothing much going on behind you, but that's to be expected if there are no actual dedicated rear speakers. But like I say, it does sound really good. And feature-wise, like I said at the beginning, it's got Google Assistant built in. So this is a fully functioning Google Assistant speaker, as well as a soundbar, which is a nice feature to have. It looks nice.
Is it just Google, Steve?
Yes, it is just Google.
I mean, I don't know who's doing the numbers. I mean, I think Apple are now kind of falling away a little bit in terms of theirs being used in terms of audio integration. But I mean, I would say that Amazon probably still has it over Google, do they not?
I would have thought so.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of products that work with Amazon too. It seems that LG in particular have got a thing going with Google, because they've got Google Assistant built into their TVs now as well. Oh, actually, the TVs have got Google and Amazon built in but this one just has Google Assistant built in. Does have I mean, it's not bad. Oh, that means obviously it's got Chromecast as well, and it supports Atmos, DTS:X, and no IMAX enhancement or anything like that. But all the usual variants of Dolby and DTS, and quite a lot of amplification built into it too. 570 watts in total, although that is including the sub. But it's a good solid soundbar. The only downside to this, my criticisms really are, doesn't support EARC, which is bizarre when you consider that one of the big selling points of LG TVs is great HDMI 2.1. And also it doesn't pass, and this is less surprising, it doesn't pass HDR10+. But otherwise it's a very good soundbar.
Okay, but you can't use it with EARC with their TVs?
No. Well, we think that's funny, but same thing with Panasonic, was it? They didn't pass HDR10+ and Dolby Vision. Well done, boys. So I don't know what do parts of the companies not talk to each other? Because you think you want to have something that was going to, work with their existing. I mean, I suppose you could say it depends on how important you think EARC is. But because obviously things like streaming services, they're using Dolby Digital Plus, so you don't actually need EARC to send Atmos back from, say, Netflix or Amazon Prime back to the soundbar. But there are other features like lip sync, that kind of thing that EARC can help with. And obviously, if you had a lossless source attached to the TV, you could then theoretically send the lossless audio back to the soundbar via EARC as well. So that would be handy, because it's only got 2 HDMI inputs, which is okay. I guess you could put up a Blu-ray, 4K Blu-ray player and a games console, attach that directly to the soundbar if you wanted to. But after that, you're running out. You'd have to go via the TV. So it's a well specified, nice and big sounding, well-made soundbar with a couple of minor things missing.
It sounds like a lot of them have little bits and pieces missing. There's no perfect one out there, is there?
I mean, the closest really, I guess, would be the Sennheiser. I mean, it's 2,000 quid. So
it ought to be nearly the complete downside picture at that money.
But it does pass HDR10+ and Dolby Vision. It's also got EARC. And well, in fairness, actually, Samsung soundbars pass both. And apparently have EARC, although I have heard people complain it doesn't work. But they've assured me on 3 different occasions that it definitely had it added in a firmware update in the spring. So, but yeah, there are little annoying things here and there with stuff that's missing, and it depends how much you're spending, doesn't it? You're spending 2,200 quid, as you say, Ed, you want the full Monty.
No, absolutely.
You might be more sort of amenable if you're only spending
I have to be careful here. I'm just about to go. I'm criticising a product costing £2,000, and we're about to move over to my product, which costs 4.5. So, yeah, okay, fine.
Okay, well, let's move across. At least the name is a bit better, and they're already saying that they're number one. So,
well, no, this is Focal, and Focal have moved over to just numbering their speakers by size. So the speaker in question is the Focal Kanta number 1, which means it is the smallest of the Kanta speakers. As noted, that doesn't necessarily make it bargain priced. It's £4,500 a pair. But the reason I wanted to look at
these are the small ones.
These are the small ones. This is a two-way stand mount, £4,500. The reason why I wanted to look at them, though, there are two very important reasons. The first is that this is currently the most affordable way of getting to listen to Focal's Beryllium tweeter in terms of a new Focal loudspeaker. Now, Focal have been using Beryllium for some time in their tweeters. I go into why they do so at length in the review. I thought it was worth explaining. It's not there genuinely are reasons why they persist in working with an incredibly expensive, enormously difficult to work with, and incredibly toxic. It has to be said. Once it's been turned into a tweeter, it's fine, but Beryllium in its natural state as mined is ferociously dangerous stuff.
It sounds like a substance that a Bond villain would be mining.
Well, my enduring memory of it is that in Galaxy Quest, their ship's powered by beryllium spheres.
Obviously, beryllium's expensive then, because the Persona, the Paradigm Personas I talked about at the beginning, they have beryllium drivers.
Yes.
As well.
The reason for this is not simply because it's expensive. As we know, in terms of designing a loudspeaker, the absolute ideal is that you want the lowest amount of mass coupled with the highest amount of rigidity possible, especially when you are dealing with high frequencies, as a tweeter does. Beryllium is the lightest solid element. If you take a beryllium tweeter, I had the demonstration of this at the factory. If you take one that's been freshly stamped and you hold it at your shoulder height in a pair of tweezers and you let go, it doesn't fall, it flutters. It goes down more slowly than dropping a leaf or a feather. They weigh that little, but at the same time they are enormously rigid, and their resonance frequencies are well outside that a tweeter is called upon to do. So Focal's not gone mad. They're not doing this purely because it's expensive. They're doing this because it does have some genuine advantages. And the long and the short of it is that the Kanta number 1 at £4,500, it does many of the things that we have, you associate with Focal. It sound stages and images beautifully. It's funny what you were saying, Steve, about soundbars. I watched Oblivion last night for the want of something better to do on Netflix. I was staggered at the level of immersive, the sense of immersion that two speakers were giving me in this room last night. It was genuinely outstanding. But most importantly, the Kanta also has a driver which has been taken from a cheaper Focal speaker. It's been beefed up. The premise is the same. Focal normally use composites for drivers in their expensive Utopia and Sopra ranges. Further down the line, they use flax, which is a plant fiber, which they turn into a composite as well. The combination of those two drivers really, really works, because not only does this thing do all the things that Focal speakers are historically good at, it's fun. Because, if I'm honest, a number of expensive Focal speakers I've listened to in the past, I found them tremendously easy to admire, but I haven't enjoyed what I've been listening to. These are genuinely enjoyable. They are able to just take a piece of music. Phil sent me a link to an album earlier this evening. I was having a quick go on that. These just take it and run with it. They're a genuinely entertaining, engrossing and invigorating listen, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with them. What's also quite handy is that Focal has taken a leaf out of some of their rivals' books. The Kanta has a two-piece chassis, so it's got a giant faceplate, which is made from a specialist plastic, and then a high-density cabinet. There are lots and lots of different finishes for this. So the review samples are quite sober. They've got a grey faceplate with a wood veneer. But if you're thinking, well, that doesn't really go with my room, you can have a big bright yellow or blue faceplate with a black cabinet. And it completely changes the aesthetic of the speaker. And I have to say, it makes them, I think that they look fantastic in some of the sort of primary colour finishes that they do. And it just makes, if you've spent £4,500, you are reaching the point where you don't just want them to sit unobtrusively in a room. They might as well be a talking point. They might as well be something that, and you know, is as visually interesting as they are sonically. So this has been one of the most positive focal listening experiences I've had in quite a while, and I've really enjoyed my time with them. The review is obviously, as you might expect, as a result of this, rather positive, but it's going to be interesting as and when Steve starts typing up his thoughts on Beryllium as to whether he thinks it's worth it. I have to say I've been quite impressed with what I've heard. I do think Beryllium's worth it, despite the dangers of mining it and the cost of installing it. Yeah. It's exceptional. The performance was exceptional. I look forward to your reviews of the Focal Big Bastards then. They're naming their speakers after what they look like. These are just little bastards. Yeah. But no, as I say, really, really good. I suppose in the interest of honesty, I'm looking at quite a lot of speakers for various people, and also personally, at and around this price point, because I'm looking for my next set of resident test speakers, because I am fed up to the back teeth of trying to store a pair of floor standers when they're not in use. So I'm switching over to stand mounts, and I'm looking for something. And it must be said, these tick an awful lot of boxes, but there are a couple of other candidates to test before we sign off on that. So we'll see where we go. Okay, good stuff. So we've covered quite a bit of audio, and although I'm going to talk about a TV, we're also going to talk a bit more about some audio. I have been looking at the Philips 934 this week, among a lot of other things I've been looking at, but I have managed to actually sit down and spend some time with it. I did some calibration with it today, some measurements and so on, and I've been watching lots of different material on it. I will have the review probably in the next fortnight, I would have thought, given everything else that I have to do at the minute. So I'm going to give you initial impressions, and the first thing is that just like every other Philips TV I've seen this year so far, in terms of an OLED panel, it basically does what it says on the tin. Out of the box, it wasn't that. It was accurate in terms of grayscale, surprisingly accurate in terms of grayscale. In fact, it was so accurate I went and did a factory reset just to check that I hadn't been given a set that somebody else has been playing around with and calibrated, just to make sure that that was the baseline measurement. And actually it was Delta E2 right across the board in terms of grayscale, which was very good. Again, Gamma still has that brightening as you get brighter in the image, around about 70% to 90%. All the Philips TVs this year, the OLEDs, have done that. This is no exception. It does the same thing. But when it came to Rec 709 color gamut coverage, it was too wide. So what I immediately did was go back into the convoluted and unintuitive menu system and find the color gamut setting just to check it wasn't set to wide, and it wasn't. It was set to normal. So it is a little bit too wide in terms of green is pushing it quite a bit. It's actually 75% is over 100 on the saturation chart, just to give you an idea of how wide it is. And blue is also oversaturated. You get the calibration controls on there. You get a 2-point and a 20-point now when it comes to white balance, and there's a full CMS as well. So within kind of 10 minutes, I had it looking exceptionally good, really accurate for SDR and Rec 709. And then moving to HDR, again, out of the box in terms of P3 coverage, really impressed with how the saturation tracking has landed on the Philips. The 984 was the same, wasn't it, Steve? It was very, very accurate for P3 saturation tracking. And the PQ EOTF, it comes set to minimum in terms of HDR perfect. That's fine for 1000 nit content. It tone maps it, very, very accurate to the actual PQ EOTF in the minimum mode. If you switch it off, it's still accurate, but it's only accurate to about 200 nits, and then it has sort of a linear roll off from that point. So if you're watching 4000 nit material, it'd probably be better with it switched off, because you'll get more highlight detail and so on. Why Philips can't do it so it reads the metadata and switches between 4000, 1000 and 10,000, I have no idea. I wish they would do that, because it would make it a lot more intuitive. Thankfully, it does come out of the box set to minimum, which is the best tone mapping for 1000 nits, and majority of material that you're going to watch is 1000 nits. But
I wish they would change that. So if it gets a metadata reading, static metadata reading, then it will switch to the correct tone map. It also does Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus out of the box. Dolby Vision looks excellent on it. In terms of peak brightness, it was 700 nits, which was the same as the 854 that I've just reviewed last week. So in terms of TV, it's cracking TV. Nice black levels, nice just above black detail, although it does crush a little bit with some content, whereas the C9 and the Panasonics don't, so there's slight differences there. It's also a little bit darker in terms of its HDR image when it's in comparison with another screen, because it has quite an aggressive ABL circuit on it, so as soon as it thinks it's starting to get a bit too bright, it dims the image, whereas, that gives you a consistent look, so it looks consistent, but when you got it in comparison with another TV like the GZ950, the 950 looks a lot brighter sat side by side because the ABL circuit's not kicking in as quick on the Panasonic, so just bear that in mind as well. So picture-wise, excellent. The big plus point for the 934, the reason it costs what it does, is the Bowers & Wilkins soundbar. Now, I didn't get to see this TV at IFA. I didn't go to IFA, so I wasn't there for the unveiling of the TV. So when it turned up in the box with two stands, it was quite confusing, and they pull out a bit of paper that tells you how to screw it together. Was no better than that you get from IKEA or a Chinese brand, where you're looking at it and it's just as confusing. But there is one bracket that you use for the soundbar when you're wall mounting it, and then there's another bracket that you use for the soundbar when you're table mounting it, and basically the soundbar sits within this bracket, and then you screw it onto the back of the TV, and it can swivel slightly as well, so it's a bit like the 854 in that respect. I've got to say, it sounds absolutely fantastic. So the soundbar it's quite a long, deep soundbar, so it's an odd shape. You get your front, but you also have your top to it, where the logos are on the top, which was confusing when it came to screwing things in to start with. It was like, oh, which way around does this go? But eventually the logos point up the way, as do the drivers inside it. So the 984 didn't have upward drivers for Atmos. This one does, which is why the soundbar is as deep as it is, and it's really nicely designed. It's a beautiful looking TV, actually. When it's all put together and screwed together, it's it looks the price that you're paying for it. And in terms of audio quality, absolutely superb. I was really surprised with the bass performance, the weight behind the sound just coming from the soundbar. Sounds great with Atmos. I was flicking through I was actually testing some YouTube stuff, and I put a Metallica concert on. I ended up watching half of the concert because it was so good, and it sounded really weighty. And you can add a subwoofer, so you can also, there's an RCA out for a subwoofer on the back of the TV as well. So if you want to add a little bit more weight for movie soundtracks and so on, you can do that. But I've got to say, whereas that was a big plus point with the GZ2000, because the GZ2000 it's not a very weighty sound to that. It's rather thin, actually, sound quality, and it needs the underpinning of a subwoofer. You could get away without a subwoofer with this Philips. It really does sound really good. And although the speaker is not as big as the one that you get with the 984, it's Bowers & Wilkins. It sounds fantastic. It sounds like a Bowers product, whereas the 903 last year didn't quite have that sound quality to it. It was good, but it wasn't what you would expect from Bowers & Wilkins. It was a little bit, too sibilant here and there, and because they were having to work within restricted parameters and so on, it wasn't quite the product that you would expect, whereas this, absolutely. In terms of sound quality, if you want to buy an OLED and a soundbar all in one, that's really, really good quality, that looks expensive, I think the Philips I've got a bit of a swagger about them this year. The products are excellent, and I just hope they can get them into the shop so people can see them and buy them, because they are up there with every other major brand this year in terms of not just picture quality and having things like Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus on board, but also Dolby Atmos sound, and it'll handle DTS, which some TVs on the market won't handle DTS through USB and so on. This does all that as well, and you've got reams and reams and reams of picture processing on board. If you're the type of person who likes vivid mode, then Philips Vivid Mode's better than anybody else's Vivid Mode. as is their soap opera effect. But if you want accuracy as well, it'll do that. So really, I'm saying that's my initial impressions. That's actually a full review there. There you go.
'Twas ever thus, but yeah, nice. Well done.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that has got upward firing drivers, whereas the 984 doesn't. But I have to say, having compared the 984 with a TV that did have upward firing drivers, the GZ2000, even though it doesn't have that, the quality of the Bowers & Wilkins sound system that's built into that TV, and also I did hear that the 934 at IFA as well, so I got a chance to compare both. They are really good sounding TVs.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want an all-round package that does everything it says on the tin and does it to a really high standard, then yeah, I mean the 934 is a really, really good TV. So the full review will be out. Like I say, it might be a fortnight just with everything else that I've got going, because I finally got around to looking at the JVC projector, Steve. I've actually spent well, I've just been so busy. Plus, I wanted to soak it in for a few hours as well. So I've got enough hours on it now to start playing about with it, start looking at it, and I also wanted to have a look at HDR before and after the firmware update. My God, what a pain in the arse it was getting that update to work, because I could not get my flash drive to format correctly so it would be read by the projector. So I actually had to go out and buy another one and then shove it in, and it worked first time with the new one. So I don't know what I've done with the other one, but it took a while to do that. It took about 25 minutes for it to update and so on. And then I took some time to sit down and watch some frame by frame. I set it to frame by frame. I set the iris. Well, I tried it auto 1, auto 2, and then manual. I preferred manual, to be honest with you. Auto 2 works okay, but then when you do get a fade to black, it seems it seems a little bit delayed, which I wasn't too happy with. It seemed like it faded to black and then the projector faded to black, whereas it should do it at the same time. But apart from that, I have to say, really, really impressed with this machine. There's a few things I don't like about it, like they've changed the lens memory functionality, which is probably not a big deal to a lot of people out there, but to myself, who has a 239:1 screen, I like that functionality. And whereas it's really intuitive to use and so on the X7900 that I normally have here, the JVC, on this it took me a while to figure out that I had to go into mode and set up a mode installation and so on. And the other thing is, it's so bloody slow. It's
what, handshaking?
No, at changing between aspect ratios. When it zooms out and repositions and all that, and then it has to have the menu pops back up on screen. And so they've gone from doing it really, really nicely, where you just hit the button for scope and it sorted it all out and fast.
Well, I think the idea was that by having an installation mode, you can not just do the aspect ratio, the lens, the zoom and shift, but also you can do things like masking and even individual pixel adjust and all sorts of things just for that one mode. So I suppose they thought they'd give you that.
Yeah,
once you get used to it, it's not an issue. I mean, when I first got the N7, I was like, well, what's going on here? But then now I'm used to it, so now it's just.
Yeah.
But you're right. Rather than just pressing a button, it does it, and that's it. You do have to press. You pull up the installation mode menu, then you select the one you want, and then.
Yeah, and then you have
to remember go back to go out of it.
Yeah, hit the back button. Yeah, which
should just disappear once you've selected it.
It should just time out once you've selected, which is what it does on the 7900. And I've gotten so used to that like you say though, if I was spending a lot of time on it, then I would set each mode up probably, like you say, to set up your picture settings and everything else as well. So I think there's 15 or 16. In fact, it could be
a lot.
Yeah, you could do a lot of stuff. But the main thing is picture quality. Again, dynamic range is not as good as the 1080p models. However, everything else is just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. There's quality glass in there. The images are really sharp. Obviously, you've got eShift to take this up to 8K as well, which I didn't find useful at all, and I've switched to eShift off after using it for a little while, because I couldn't tell any difference, to be perfectly honest, between the 4K and 8K, even on a big scope screen. And yeah, it's been nice having my cinema room back. I don't have
so on that basis, then you would go for the N7, not the NX9.
I don't know. I don't think there's
other than the fact there's a big difference in price, of course.
There's obviously a huge difference in price, which is probably why you would probably look at the N7 seriously, whereas the NX9 I think is more for custom instant.
Was it 18 grand? Is that right?
It's around about that. I don't know the exact price.
Is that 10 grand more?
Yeah, it's about that.
I mean, you get the E-Shift, 8K E-Shift, and THX certification, but that's it, right? I mean, otherwise it's the same. So
it's more or less the same.
I mean, there are minor differences, but yeah. I think the lens is definitely bigger as well.
It is, yes, and
that's probably where a lot of the cost has gone, actually. Yeah,
it's definitely. I would say image sharpness and so on. Although I haven't seen an N7 next to one to be confident of what I'm saying there, but I would imagine that next to each other you would start to see a little bit more differences in terms of sharpness and so on, like you do with the Sony models. The Sony models, they look like they're identical in isolation, but actually when you put them side by side, you start to notice the odd bit of differences here and there. If it's worth 10 grand or not, it's up to the end user really if they're going to spend that type of money. It's a lot of money, but it's really suited to custom install, which is like the bigger Sony VW models are very much for that market as well. So yeah, it's a great machine. I've still again got to spend a bit more time with it, and I haven't even put a meter up. It looks so good out of the box. I haven't even calibrated it yet, so I'm expecting it to.
They're pretty well, in my experience so far, at least, that they're pretty accurate out of the box.
Yeah.
There's room, there's always room for a bit of improvement, but yeah, they are pretty accurate out of the box, and I think with the NX9, probably more so.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been disappointed with the image quality I've been getting so far, and I've got to say the frame adaptive HDR, that is the best HDR image I have seen so far from a projector. I'm prepared to put my neck on the line at that.
No, I totally agree.
It looks fantastic, and wide color as well. And the fact that you can switch wide color off if you want, or you can have the filter in there, and that's again something that you're given the choice. And I didn't notice a big drop off in brightness either by putting the filter in there. So yeah, I was quite happy to run that. So I'm actually looking forward to watching a bit more films on that. And talking about films, we're going to move on to that next. Time to move on to the movie section and also do films and all the rest of it. But actually, what I forgot to do was it's end of the month, so we need to wait 5 minutes, Kaz, before we talk about movies. Kaz is now on the podcast, by the way. So I'll introduce Kaz in a bit. But first, Ed has to do his playlist, vinyl, and album of the month.
Yeah, album of the month is pretty simple. Came out on the 25th. An artist that I've recommended a couple of times, Fink. That's the performing name of Finian Greenall from Bristol, signed to the Ninja Tune label. His latest album is called Bloom Innocent, and it's an interesting listen. You probably, the first time you listen to it, you think it lacks a bit of focus, lacks a bit of drive. Fink's move into doing genuine acoustic music came off the back of him originally being a techno DJ. So there was always a degree of sort of rhythm and get up to some of his older stuff. And the first time you listen to this, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's got that. But listen a bit longer, and you'll suddenly it snaps into place. I've given it 4 or 5 listens now, and it really suddenly starts to sort of work, and it's a bit of a weird one. So you can either just get shot of it out of hand, or give it the time it deserves. It's less than an hour long. Shouldn't take too long to do, and I would suggest trying to listen to it in relatively quiet surroundings. It's probably not going to work on a train. But nevertheless, I think it's worth persisting with. If you're looking for something more fun, it has to be said that I mentioned it earlier. Phil made a recommendation to me earlier on, which I now can't get to because we're locked into... No, there we go. You sent through the Essential Funk Box by The Last Minister. That was a damn good...
From 2007.
Oh, it's not a new release then. I didn't check that bit. I just loaded it. But that's that. If you're looking for something with a bit more get up and go, then I'd suggest that. Vinyl release is another reissue. I'm afraid I haven't been able to do as much listen to new stuff as I'd like, because I've obviously been doing things like moving house. But this is an important reissue. Earlier this year, Mark Hollis, who was the lead singer of Talk Talk, very sadly died. He mainly worked with Talk Talk, but in 1998 he released a solo album, imaginatively called Mark Hollis, and it wasn't very widely released on any format, but vinyl release was incredibly narrow. Some years later there was a repressing, but it was done by someone who didn't understand how vinyl works, so this has always been a very sought after record. I'm delighted to say that you can pre-order it. It will be released in November, and it's been redone at Abbey Road, and as I understand it, the people who have done the pressing are also well established in the game. So again, please don't listen to this one expecting fireworks, but it's music as mood. It's tonal, it's deep, it moves all over different aspects of timing and presentation and so on and so forth. It's tremendously important, and more than that, Hollis did something where we've often, it's come up in discussions, if you were very, very famous, could you just walk away? And he did. At the end of this, he recorded this album. He did a tiny little piano instrumental for the then very fledgling partnership of Uncle, which was James Lavelle and DJ Shadow at that point. There's a tiny little piece of piano work that was done by him for science fiction, and that was it. He never performed again. He just disappeared, and so on and so forth. This is the last outpouring of what Mark Hollis became over a 25-year sort of time period, and the reason he stopped is because he was completely happy with it. And if you find that that's a bit weird, then that's fair enough, but as far as I'm concerned, it's an utterly beautiful album, and I'm fervently hoping that this repressing has the level of quality that it so richly deserves. So available to order now. Playlists, I haven't been listening to any playlists because all of the streaming services just aren't putting the effort in anymore. It's most distressing. I can't get too high critical about this because I'm not putting in the effort anymore, and I haven't done one for ages either for you guys. I did very briefly listen to the Focus on Hair Metal on Qobuz whilst I was cleaning, because I tend to find that music like that's very good for cleaning. But that is about as far as it goes. I think streaming services are getting a bit leaner at the moment. I was further on from the conversation I was having in the podcast last week. There's less money flying around and so on and so forth. They're paying attention to getting some of the basics right. Qobuz is still putting in a bit of effort, but for the most part, they're just making sure that they've got the albums. And in the case of Deezer and Spotify and people like that, they've got their software to tell you about albums that you haven't listened to yet. And that's about as far as it goes.
I have, Ed, just discovered the joys of Rune. Which I'm very happy with.
What a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wasn't simply blowing smoke up people's asses.
No,
it's quite the thing.
Me likey.
It's a lovely, lovely thing. So yes, I've got to invest in a proper Rune core at some point as well. Spend yet more money I don't have.
Time and money sorting it all out.
Yeah, I'm thinking, where the hell are you getting all this money from? You're buying £4,000 speakers and £400 rugs, and
he's flush.
Essentially, this house cost. I had a maximum budget. This house came in under that, so I was able to reduce my deposit and go a bit longer on the mortgage. So there is a little bit of capital floating around, mainly because I'm anxious to ensure that I'm more productive and capable of doing different things, and I want to buy some paintings, but that's slightly different. But on a base, it's time, having muddled through on the hardware that went with me into the little house. It's now time to upgrade some of the capabilities. I mean, my rack is back, as I said last week. I do want to switch over to having a proper Rune core. I'd like to have a pair of loudspeakers which are less. I mean, I've been able to review quite happily with the speakers I've used for some years because I know exactly what they do. But nevertheless, possibly something which is less overtly away from neutral was probably beneficial, and there's some other bits and bobs that just need to be altered, not least because being breathtakingly cynical, of course it is also can be offset against tax
deductible,
and
Exactly.
it furthers the ability to be on the list when editors go, oh, who can do that? I can do that, and you can beat some other freelancer who
I
isn't
have
trying
discovered
hard enough.
that I fill a specific niche currently in that I am pretty much the only person who can currently do surround sound speaker packages. Good news for me.
you.
And
Not
the
for your
most
back.
wonderful phrase in the English language is, yes, it is tax deductible.
Right.
So yeah.
Moving on, we need to do movies now, so thanks very much for that, Ed. And moving on to films that are opening this week, Kaz.
Right, this week we've got the long gestating Shining sequel, which is Doctor Sleep.
Understatement.
Yeah, tell me about
40
it.
years.
Well, it's a bit of
In
a
fairness, Stephen King didn't write Doctor Sleep until only a few years ago, right? So it's not like the book's been around for a long time.
No, and we're having that King resurgence, aren't we?
Yeah.
About 5 films a year.
It seems to be all Netflix is doing it these days.
Yeah, Netflix churns out a lot of Stephen King films. Yeah, and it looks quite good. I have to say
It's had good reviews, I noticed.
The trailer looks quite good. Ewan McGregor is on form. Suitably creeped out by everything going on in that. I think.
I find it quite funny that Stephen King famously hated Kubrick's version of The Shining. Hated it to the point where he actually produced
a TV
version that
which he
was
preferred.
closer to the book, even though I think that having read the book, I think Kubrick's interpretation is better. But interestingly, obviously the book Doctor Sleep is a sequel to the book The Shining, but the movie adaptation clearly couldn't ignore Kubrick's film, so it is more of a cinematic sequel to the film with elements of Doctor Sleep, the book. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what King thinks of it.
I wonder if Ewan McGregor says hello there in it.
Well, here's Ewan. I have to say, I think I've said this before. My big problem with Ewan McGregor is he doesn't. His American accent's terrible. I think it's one of the worst American accents done by a non-American actor, obviously, which always puts me off. The only time it works is in the film Big Fish, where he's doing a sort of a southern Alabama accent, but he just gets away with it because his character's got this big cheesy grin, which he does brilliantly. He does the best cheesy grin in cinema.
I thought it worked in Fargo because they're all so weird.
Yeah, well, in Fargo it was okay because everyone talks with what's it called, Minnesota Nice, isn't it?
Yeah, so he fits in there. But in general, I agree with that. Yeah, we'll see. That looks quite good. And After the Wedding as well, for those who aren't seeing Doctor Sleep.
The what?
What? and what's it about?
A manager of an orphanage in Kolkata travels to New York to meet a benefactor.
That sounds riveting. Who's
yes, let's see Doctor Sleep. Michelle Williams, Julianne Moore, Billy Crudup. I mean, it could be a hidden gem, but I shall not be finding out at the cinema.
I think I'll go to Doctor Sleep.
Yep. Exactly.
Right then. Film of the month. Do we need to do the film of the month? It's Joker, obviously, isn't it?
Not for me, isn't it?
Oh, really? I was going to make a joke about Dark Fate there, but yeah.
I mean, Joker's. It's not like I want to watch it ever again. And it's just I don't know. I just felt like it isn't really. Did they just turn the camera on and just say to Joaquin Phoenix, "Yeah, do whatever you want"?
Oh, I don't care.
2 hours.
I'd watch another half an hour of him doing that crazy ass dance.
It's not the Joker, is it? I mean, the Joker's meant to be this brilliant criminal.
Does there need to be?
A failed comedian.
It's a different take on it, and I thought it was superb. So it's my film of the month. What's yours, Steve?
Well, I mean, if we have to go this month, then I'd probably go with Terminator: Dark Fate. Much to my surprise, because I went in with zero expectations, but I actually ended up rather enjoying it.
Right. Okay. Kaz?
Yeah, I'll go with Joker. I did enjoy Dark Fate. I won't deny that. But
we're coming on to Dark Fate, so we can go into that in a bit more detail. But yeah, Joker. Okay. Ed, did you go to the cinema?
No.
Right. Okay. We'll move on then. Discs coming out this week, Kaz.
Yeah. So on 4K, we got Wizard of Oz, and we've got Terminator Salvation.
I am really looking forward to Wizard of Oz.
There's the double bill.
The Wizard of Oz is un-effing believable for a film that's 80 years old. That they did an 8K scan of the 3-strip Technicolor negative, and I mean, the colours on it are just unbelievable.
Well, it was a big project for Technicolor. I mean, they were working on this when I went to their office, and that would have been 2014. So 5 years ago.
It's absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I'm also getting Terminator Salvation because I quite like that.
Yeah, Terminator Salvation. Well, you see, the thing is, you can't pull that one from the future, can you? Because there's no US release at the moment. So you can't talk about how you...
No, I haven't got it yet. It comes tomorrow.
Yeah,
I can't believe
exactly.
on that one.
I've already got it, and it looks amazing. And it's not an Atmos mix, but it's pretty good.
It was a pretty full-bodied mix to start with, if I remember correctly.
So it polishes up really nicely. It's good. Pretty gritty. Disappointment factor comes in not having both cuts.
Oh, is it not the extended director's cut?
No, and they really, come on, it's 4K. They got the technology, just do it. Just so annoying that some releases they can't be bothered. You get like 3 versions of Apocalypse Now, and you get the blue.
Yeah, but that's Apocalypse Now.
No, I know, but I mean,
Terminator Salvation.
But give it some value for people who are going to pick it up.
But they're not interested now. I mean, it might change now that, you know, Sony's made the decision with PS5, but it seems to me that the studios just aren't interested anymore. You'll get the odd. If the filmmaker gets behind it, you'll get a nice addition. If not, it just seems to be that they're putting them out there, and they would rather have them on streaming services or whatever.
I got a little bit worried because I was looking at what's coming out between now and the end of the year to order, and not much.
It's always quieter around Christmas, though. We've had a whole host of Toy Stories and all of the Pixar ones.
All that stuff. Disney just chucking them all out before Disney Plus kicks in.
Yeah, there's a whole. I mean, we've been inundated with them at the moment. It's always a bit quieter at Christmas time.
You might get some rest, Kaz, at Christmas.
Right. I know, you keep reviewing really crap Netflix stuff, don't you?
Blu-ray, we've got Midsummer, we've got Warriors Season 1, we've got the entire Before trilogy on Criterion. I think the comp's still running for that. And we got Satanic Panic by Arrow and Good Omens Season 1.
Satanic Panic sounds like a Quiet Riot tribute act.
Yep. Right, disc of the month, or discs of the month. For me, it has to be John Wick Chapter 3, 4K. It looks amazing. It's now in my demo rotation now. It is absolutely fantastic in terms of dynamic range and colour. The opening.
It does look stunning.
It is amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
It's got good soundtrack too.
I think as modern releases go, that was the one that wowed me the most. I mean, we had a lot of big blockbusters this month, but there are so many shots in John Wick 3 that you could just pause it and go, wow, they've really gone to town on that furnace or that lighting, or
it looks like a graphic novel, the way they've gone to town with the colours and so on. And that opening, you know, in New York when it's raining and you got the colours bouncing off the water on the pavements and so on. When he comes out the library and you got the lighting on the stairs and stuff, it just looks amazing. Really, really good. So that's my disc of the month. Yours, Kaz?
Well, because you've gone with John Wick 3, I think I'm going to go left field and give it to Angel Heart, because I did not expect this to land on 4K. I did not expect them to stick it with Dolby Vision, and it looks fantastic. They've really gone the extra mile on it, and for me, it's a cult classic. It's one of my favourite films. I'm really surprised they turned up and stuck Angel Heart on 4K so early. So I would say, as older features go that clean up nicely, and with Dolby Vision, they did a tremendous job. And boy, what a movie! No matter how many times I see it, I still don't want it to end that way.
Right. Okay. Steve?
I'm going to go with Hellboy, the 2004 original Guillermo del Toro version, which came out this month, and it was delayed because originally it was supposed to come out probably before the remake hit the screens, but it was delayed because del Toro said, "Look, we're going to put out a new version. Let's add some new extras. So he did a new commentary and there's some other stuff on it that's new. Plus, it's got everything else that was on the previous releases. It's also got both versions of the film, the director's cut and the theatrical release. The restoration from the camera negative is it's native 4K. It's absolutely superb, and it's got a brand new Atmos soundtrack that's awesome too. So if you're a fan of that film and Del Toro in general, it's definitely worth picking up.
Right, okay, good stuff. Moving on swiftly, because we're running out of time again. Streaming-wise, Kaz.
Streaming, we have, coming up, we've got Arrow, the final season. We've got The King coming to Netflix, and American Son coming to Netflix. We'll see how those turn out, whether they get more...
Arrow streaming, or is that just on Sky? Is that not just TV?
Sky.
Yeah.
So it starts as an episode a week, like the others. All the others started last week. And Arrow is this week.
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Legend. Yeah, it is. It is the end of Arrow. I think it's a shorter season. And then the Crisis. So that's what we got coming streaming.
Okay, good stuff. So let's move on then to our best TV. We've got lots to do this month. Best TV that we've seen this month. Let's get Steve first.
It's a late entry because it only started last week, but I'm really enjoying so far, at least only one episode in, but Watchmen on HBO, Sky Atlantic, is it's a really interesting take on as a sequel to the original Watchmen comic, and it's full of really interesting ideas, and I'm surprised because I genuinely don't like Damon Lindelof, but I think he's done quite a good job so far. I mean, as I say, only one episode in, so I could suddenly do a Game of Thrones later, but
or Lost.
I like. Or go like Lost. But so far, I like what they're doing. I like the ideas. I like the execution. I like the look of it.
Great soundtrack.
Yeah. It's really good.
Okay, good stuff. For me, documentary-wise, I've watched a few documentaries. Ones that are worthy of mentioning. Spotlight on the Troubles, Secret History. 7 episodes. Really, really interesting. Even if you know nothing about what went on in Northern Ireland, it's really interesting. It's really quite depressing at times, and it gives you an insight to the issue that I don't think many of us knew a lot of the stuff that's in here, and it's a real eye-opener, actually. Ian Hislop's Fake News, I watched that as well, True History, which is really quite good. So both of them on BBC 4, and that's about as much as I've managed to watch, to be honest. Ed?
I'm going to fly the flag for Taskmaster. I don't know what season we're on to now, but it's still an absolute joy to watch. It just, what a wonderful concept. And for as long as they have a ready supply of comedians to put themselves forward for it, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it's been quite eye-opening just how, I have long considered myself to be a gloriously impractical human being. I have very little common sense. But compared to David Baddiel, I'm a bloody survivalist. He is tremendously useless. But no, it's been really, really entertaining. Thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through. So well done, Dave, for making quality viewing on a budget of about 28p.
I forgot to mention Fifth Gear's on Quest. I don't know if you've caught any of it.
No,
don't bother. It's not good. It's not good at all. And one other that I forgot as well is because I've got a real interest in the subject matter, Catching Britain's Killers, the crimes that changed the law and changed the way we look at stuff. It's 3 episodes, DNA, Pace, and the other one was, I can't remember now. It's off the top of my head. But anyway, if you like your documentary stuff, you like true crime stuff, I recommend that as well. Kaz?
I would second Watchmen as being a really great follow-up to what could have gone all kinds of wrong, but I'm actually going to have to go with Mr. Robot, because I think that's Esmail's just done phenomenal work there. Every frame he does is masterful. His music choices are superb, and I'm only 2 episodes into the latest season, and the second episode, Revelation, which will just put an entire spin on potentially everything so far, is tremendous. And it still messes with your mind seeing Rami Malek and Christian Slater on screen at the same time, and you forget after a while what they're actually doing by having them on screen at the same time. It's tremendous work. So I'll go with that. Top viewing.
Okay, good stuff. Moving on from TVs then, or TV shows rather than TVs. The Star Wars trailer came out, the final trailer before the film hit cinemas on December 20th. Runtime's going to be 2 hours, 35 minutes. Longest Star Wars film there has been so far. I'm not going to say ever because they're getting longer every time they come out.
Yeah, because the previous one was 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Obviously, it's the end of the saga, and having watched the film, I could not care. The trailer, I could not care less. I'm going to go to the cinema and see it because, you know, it's drilled into me. But if that was supposed to make me excited to want to go and see a film, yeah, if that's the best thing about the trailer was the music, the John Williams music, and if that's the best thing about it, then yeah. As soon as those horse things came on, it's like, oh, geez, you're just throwing everything at the screen now. And I was discussing this with you earlier this week, Steve, and I think Red Letter Media, if you've never seen the videos, go watch the videos. They're very, very funny guys, very sarcastic, and they've got it right. I mean, Star Wars films are now, they have to have TIE fighters, they have to have Star Destroyers, they have to have these callbacks for the fans, and watching the trailer, if you watch the trailer and watch how many callbacks there are, C-3PO, what are you doing? I'm looking at my friends. Well, hang on a minute, you don't know anybody in this room, or you've only met them in the last sort of 20 minutes in real time. What the, yeah, sorry, I'm going to get angry if I talk anymore. It's just stupidity. Steve?
There were parts of it that got me. I thought, well, I quite like the look of that, but they were throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at the screen in a desperate attempt to get everyone's attention. Not a big fan of space horses. Didn't like the look of that at all, because they appear to be running along the top of a Star Destroyer in space, which doesn't make any sense at all. Obviously, I'll go, and see how they finished everything off. But yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that a friend of mine, we decided we'd watch The Force Awakens again. Watch it in 3D actually on the N7, and I got to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, it's a greatest hits package. Yes, it's derivative, but it's fun and I like the characters and things. Then I watched The Last Jedi, and whilst this is the third viewing, there are elements that I appreciated more this time round than before. I still don't like it. I still think the plot's crap, and I still think the whole Canto Bite thing's bollocks. And there's element, going into hyperspace to destroy another ship and the Force Ghost thing doesn't make any sense. But I think that in there could have been a good film if it had been done properly.
If it had been done with some care.
Yeah, and some trying to stay faithful to what had gone before but whilst taking it in another direction. But there are elements in there that I think, well, okay, the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren in particular does work. So it's not, but the weird thing is it just leaves, by the end, it's like there's about 8 people left on the Millennium Falcon. So God knows where all the ships are coming from in the trailer that we were watching.
Yeah, there's now hundreds of, I mean, there was one shot there where the Millennium Falcon comes into the shot and there's hundreds and hundreds of spaceships. Where the hell did they come from? Because at the end of Last Jedi, it was like
there were hundreds of Star Destroyers. Where do they come from? I mean, old school Star Destroyers from from the original series trilogy, not the new ones. So if the trailer's not making any sense, the film's. So the thing that struck me was I watched those 2 films and I thought, okay, I've just watched for nearly 5 hours of Star Wars. I still have absolutely no idea who the First Order are, where they came from, how that relates to the Republic, who the Resistance are, who Snoke was. So. No one's explained anything. Just thrown it all in. I'm not expecting too many explanations in the last one either.
Yeah. Well, as long as you probably won't be disappointed in that regard. So that's fine. It's annoying. Half the problem is I'd love to have come up with this myself, but a friend of mine pointed it out to me. I think one of the things that we sort of subconsciously forget, we have been treated to an incredibly slow universe building with the Clone Wars because of the nature of how that's worked, and to suddenly snap back into getting stuff done in a film length package, it's sort of the only reason why. One of the reasons why Rogue One is commendably satisfying is because it takes place between 2 points with which we're already pretty happy with, and it's like an extended Clone Wars episode. It just gets a job done. This universe building done in a split-ass hurry with all sorts of different things pulling in different directions and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, compared to however many umpteen seasons of Clone Wars and the rest of it, suddenly feels, as you say, it's incredible. They're long films, but they're chaotic, and they still don't answer very much.
Because there's not much you can do with a Star Wars film, really, is there? I mean, where can you take it? Where can you take a Star Wars film? You got lightsabers, you got the Jedi, you got the dark side, you got the light side, some TIE fighters, some spaceships, other ships. Yeah, where can you take it?
Yeah. Well, we've had this discussion before. You either, I mean, what's it? Wasn't there talk of doing something based around the Knights of the Old Republic computer game?
They still talk about doing that.
That fascinates me. And then equally, because I love him, a Wedge story.
Apparently, you'll be glad to know, Ed, Wedge is going to be in Rise of the Skywalker.
I know, and it's one of the very few things that's compelling me to go anywhere near it, because I love Dennis.
I am looking forward to The Mandalorian, which looks like it might be interesting.
Yes,
I'm looking forward to Kenobi.
You see, this was another thing I mentioned to Steve earlier in the week. You know, for all the prequels, we didn't like them, and we call them and all the rest of it. They were different. They were trying to be different. I mean, obviously tax laws and all the rest of it, trade disputes, and so way above kiddies' heads. But at least Lucas was trying to do something different. He wasn't falling back on old tropes. He wasn't falling back on callbacks or, we had to have the Millennium Falcon in it, or we had to have a TIE fighter in it, or a Star Destroyer. It was different. And he was trying to do different things and take it away from the original trilogy. Whereas this trilogy, it just feels like complete and utter fan service, because Disney are just not brave enough to do anything different with it. And what really appeals to me is the Mandalorian side of things, because you're looking at the seedy underworld. So you haven't got any Jedis, you haven't got lightsaber battles, you haven't got the Empire that much. It's on the periphery. You're following characters and you're following a different part of the universe, which is
set after Jedi, right? So it's the period when the Empire's fallen and everything's in chaos, I think. So interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something interesting. This trailer, didn't do anything for me.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a remake of based upon the other two films, it's going to be a remake of Return of the Jedi, isn't it? Basically,
just waiting on the Ewoks
with the Emperor. I love it if they put some Ewoks in and Jar Jar Binks. I'll die a happy man. That's what we need. Okay. If you're going to go full tilt, don't muck about. Just stick everything in.
Fire everything. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right, anybody else got anything to say about Star Wars, or can we move on to our
No.
Okay, we'll move on to our film review of the evening. This is a spoiler-heavy review, so if you do not want to know anything about Terminator, Dark Fate, any spoilers, anything like that, now is the time for you to switch off and join us next week. And if you're still with us, right, so we're going to crack on, just to make sure everybody has seen this.
No.
Are you bothered about spoilers?
No.
Right, okay, so we'll continue then. Right, so Terminator Dark Fate. Got to say, I went in with my expectations well on the floor. I thought it was going to be awful. The trailers did it no favours whatsoever. The CG in the trailers and stuff, it just,
the entire plot,
and it did more or less give away stuff. You know, I'm going to stop watching trailers because it's ruining a lot of movies recently. I have to say though, kudos, the opening to the film, superb. The de-aging, the way that they set the whole thing up. Yes, it pisses on the other sequel films, because this is the follow-on to Judgment Day. This is the third film in that, and it takes it away from what's gone before. But I have to say, the way they set it up was excellent. And at that point, I'm like, right, I'm into this. I'm ready to go.
It was a daring opening, and I think that there are a lot of comparisons to Alien 3, but I think that I didn't find it was too insulting to what had gone before, because in a way, it was a natural end for John Connor once Judgment Day was averted. I can see why that story worked. He wasn't killed pre-Judgment Day. He was killed afterwards, where he was just a boy growing up. And the only tragedy that unfolded from that was for Sarah.
Yeah, who'd failed to save humanity, but failed to save her own son.
And I thought that was perfect. And it worked really well to tie in old Arnie. I didn't know how they could bring him into this movie.
He was the surprise of this film, because he was really funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wasn't Elton John glasses funny. That was the core. He wasn't just being a goofball. He was funny because he was talking about drapes in a really intimidating fashion. You know,
he's also great when he says, "I'm a good protector, I'm a good listener, and I'm also very funny."
Yeah, and everybody just sits and stares at him. Yeah, I mean, his comic timing is excellent. But anyway, like the opening, it worked. I think. I can see why it'd upset people, but I also think it's nice to see something a bit different, a bit daring. If you're going to do the third film, the official third film, you may as well do something like that. And like you say, it continues the story on. So we move from there to who this film is about. And I think I forget the actress's name who plays the...
Nadia Reyes?
Nadia Reyes.
Her name? Natalie Reyes, sorry.
Right. I thought she was the weakest link.
Yes.
In this. She wasn't a very good actor, although Sarah Connor. Poor Linda Hamilton. She hasn't acted for 20 years. You could tell. She did her best, but, you know, there was a few...
She was still better than the newcomer.
Yes, absolutely. And I thought the newcomer was the weakest link. I'm going to be terrible with actors' names because I can't remember the skinny, tall lass that plays
Mackenzie Davis.
She was aces.
She was good.
She was really good. Yeah. Really, really good. And I think because she was good and Arnie was good, it saved the film. The film rode on them. Plus, I think they made a few decisions within the film as well, which it didn't go over the top. Now, the action sequences and stuff were over the top, and there's loads of physics that didn't quite work and all the rest of it, and some terrible CG in here. Some of it looks amazing. Other bits, you can tell it's been rushed. The fight in the factory at the beginning, the new Terminator looked terrible. Kept switching,
jumping around.
Why don't they just stick him on some wires and do it for real? Yeah, you can do it for real. Do it for real. That's my view. Yeah, but and then I agree. The effects look like the post production schedule was pretty tight. Yeah, and the effects could have done a bit more time, I think.
Yeah, but I've got to say, and I don't want to ruin it completely for anybody that hasn't seen it, although we are talking spoilers here.
Yeah, so hopefully you have seen it.
So if you have seen it, we got this far. But I don't want to go, into every inch of this film. But for me, I thought I was entertained. It was a tad too long. It could have done with some tightening up in places, but it followed. Like a Star Wars film, it followed the way that these films work. So you have your opening, you have the introduction to the person who's the Terminators are coming back to protect. You have a big opening gambit, big opening stunt thing. Then you have your quiet period. You have a big set piece in the middle, and then another, getting your plot together for your end battle where everything's gonna go up. And it followed that. It was entertaining. The only thing I would say is it could have been tightened up in the edit a little bit more. And the acting from the new lass was terrible. And Linda Hamilton, she wasn't that great either.
Just listening to all this, because I have my interest is separated. But I love the first one. I just love the relentlessness of it. The pursuit movie ethic, the aesthetic, and it doesn't sound like. This sounds more like in the Terminator 2 vein more than the original. Just the menace of the original.
The second movie's tremendously menacing. I think they absolutely nailed it. The guy, they doubled down on it, and the guy who's chasing them is literally unstoppable. I actually think Dark Fate is the closest they've come.
Yeah, they've gone for that aesthetic again.
They've from that opening scene sets the tone, and there on out, you've got this guy who. I mean, you've seen it in the trailers, and I really hate the trailer for that because it's a tremendous scene when you see they're throwing everything at this Terminator, and it's still coming in. And even afterwards, they haven't put it down. They've just delayed it long enough to get away for a bit. I mean, it's definitely an oppressive mood that it establishes. I think that they've nailed that in comparison to previous movies. I mean, the last movie, the nanotech dude, wasn't in the least bit intimidating.
Yeah.
And I think getting down back to basics with this double up of Terminators was a really clever idea. He was really unstoppable.
Yeah. But again, it raises the question, how far can you take the story? It's a Terminator sent back to kill somebody, and it's about trying to get to the end, basically. And it follows the same pattern every time. So there's only so much you can do with it. Some of the throwbacks, some of the flashbacks and stuff is interesting, but they're interesting in the context that they're flashbacks within that story. I don't want to see the future war. I don't really want to see how the world ended and all the rest of it. I think, again, it's pointing back to like prequel films and that kind of thing. Do we really need to know? I mean, like Solo, did we really need to know about Han Solo? The same with this, I think because this works because it doesn't do that, whereas the other sequel type film, they tried to like you say, double down on what happened and how did we get to the certain place, how did we get to Judgment Day and so on, which didn't work, I don't think.
For me, the problem I had was I like the idea that basically Judgment Day is inevitable. It's just a question of how it happens. It's like mankind is doomed to destroy itself because we're going to muck about with AIs. We're going to do it. It's just, it wasn't Skynet. It's called Legion now, but it's basically the same thing. What I had a problem with was one that Natalia Reyes. She's about 5 foot. Well, she's 5'1", and she looks about 12. I know she's actually 31, but she looks about 12. She does not look like anyone who could lead anyone anywhere, and she's meant to be the savior. There's no way that she's going to lead an army anywhere. So that just looked. I mean, whereas Mackenzie Davis, I totally could believe she could lead an army. She looked ripped.
Yes. I think it was a really bad casting, and
terrible casting. It ruined it. They should have cast someone who at least could look more imposing in the future war sequences when she's meant to be in charge.
Yeah,
that's one
was
problem.
The same with a different hairdo.
Yeah.
And her little speech was horrendous. I also think it was a bit politicized. The way Sarah Connor just assumes it's she's gonna. She's
have a baby who's going to a boy
who's going to be the man who leads the resistance, and they're like, no, it's actually you. It's
who's being protected by two women, and they've killed off John Connor at the beginning, so there was a bit of that to it.
I really don't think they needed to have that as
heavy hand
so obvious.
Well, it was...
they've got Mackenzie Davis right there. She kicks all kinds of ass without even making a big statement about it. What I'd have liked to have seen. An alternate reality, but it's just a movie with Mackenzie Davis protecting someone versus a Terminator.
Yeah, did Linda Hamilton really need to be there?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily. I mean, I like the fact that we saw Arnie and Linda Hamilton in a kind of a classic throwback nod way, but if it was going to be a movie that would stand up to comparison to the ones that have gone before, I'd have got on board with Mackenzie Davis fighting an unstoppable Terminator, dying at the end for it, and saving another future integral part of the human race. I'd have been all over that movie. She's great in it.
The worst line in the whole movie is Linda Hamilton. She says, "She's like John."
Yeah.
The bit that I didn't like, and this really surprised me because I thought Tim Miller did a bang-up job with Deadpool. I didn't think the direction was particularly good. The action direction in particular, I thought was poor. If you watch the bike chase in Terminator 2, it's a textbook example of how to shoot and cut a chase sequence. You always know where everybody is, and you appreciate what danger they're in. Miller kept putting the camera inside the car or truck, so you couldn't see where anybody else was, and therefore you didn't know whether they were about to get hit by something or not, and therefore there was no tension. I just thought the direction was surprising. The action direction was surprisingly poor for someone who I know can direct action, because he did a good job with Deadpool. They
really didn't also need to go for crazy finale. I mean, I know that they're trying to give people value for money.
I mean, with two planes and all that. So I mean,
really.
How much punishment do people? I mean, they fell out of a plane and then they fell off the side of a massive dam. I know Mackenzie Davis is meant to be enhanced, but nobody else was. They'd have been killed.
Whereas actually, the fight at the end in the factory was pretty good. But I don't know whether it needed all this grandstanding, Humvee floating through the air, crashing planes into each other stuff earlier. I know they want to throw money at it and make it, oh, look, this is a big blockbuster, but they could have stripped all of that out.
Yeah, I'd rather they spent the money on practical effects and doing more of the stunts for real.
Yes, yeah. But yes, so yeah, Mackenzie Davis gets top marks.
Yeah, she rocks. She absolutely rocks.
And I didn't mind seeing the old crew back, but it wasn't necessary for a good movie.
Seeing the old crew back made me feel very old.
They looked very old.
And they needed
you are very old.
They needed a better saviour of the human race. Because you know what? Edward Furlong irritated the hell out of me.
It should be you, Kaz. And you save the world because you've sat and watched all the crap on Netflix. So you've got the key. You've got the key to defeat the machine.
On that bombshell.
Was that a bombshell?
I'm quite hungry.
Well, I could hear you eating, Ed.
Yeah, yes, we could.
I had to break out the emergency fruit pastels. I'm starving.
You're the only person who can make fruit pastels sound like crisps.
They've got sugar on the outside and they're crunchy.
Right. On that bombshell, that's it for this week. My thanks to Ed Selley.
I will not fight you, Father.
Steve Withers.
Weezer free!
And Kaz Harlow.
Really? Perhaps I can find new ways to motivate them.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark AVForums for the latest reviews, news, and videos. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos on the latest product launches and reviews. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe. Don't forget, we're not here for the normal podcast next week. It's a calibration special podcast, which has been pre-recorded a couple of days ago. So if we mention anything in it that sounds dated, that's why. And we will be back with the normal podcast on the 11th of November. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again, pre-recorded, next week.